I serve as the Vice President for the Internet Society of Namibia Chapter. For this specific engagement, I will be heading this report launch as the Master of Ceremony. So I would like to thank each and every one of you for making and availing your time to be part of this report launch. So this is the Online Violence Against Women report launch for Namibia. And before we officially start with our event, I would like to share with you one video in which I will also be continuously repeating the videos now as we go, because we have about 6 different short videos of about 1 minute to a maximum 2 minutes long on just some of the experiences and some of the recordings that we have been doing as we were busy with this campaign. So this is the first video, and then from there we can start on with the session.
On the internet, I've been called an insect, I've been called fat, I've been told to test for testosterone. And that's the danger. On the internet, I've been called an insect, I've been called fat, I've been told to test for testosterone. And that's the danger.
On the internet, I've experienced severe abuse. I've been called a boy because I dress the way that I dress. And of course, I've been told to take a bath because I don't have my foundation on. I don't have my wig on. I'm saying my foundation and my wig because it's actually things I can't afford. I just don't get because it's unfortunately not my style. But that doesn't make it okay for people to call me a boy or a man on the internet.
All right, so that is 2 of the videos on the experiences some of our guests or the entertainment, the artists were sharing with us on their experiences on the internet. So without wasting any time, I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Anna Amomo, who is the Internet Society Namibian Chapter President. Give us the welcoming remarks as we are about to dive into this online report launch. Ms. Anna Amomo, are you there? And if you can take over.
Yes, Josephat, I'm here. I just want to confirm if everybody can hear me, and to say that thank you very much, and welcome, a very big welcome to everybody that is here for the report launch. Thank you and welcome to everybody that has participated in the report as well, and the hard work that has been put into it. Currently, the Internet Society is ending off this report with a launch that has taken about 6 months to complete. During the 6 months, there were various methods used to establish exactly how the research was going to be conducted, and as well as the various types that online violence against women takes. This is nothing new to the internet space. However, we are aware that COVID-19 as a pandemic has escalated the violence against women, and none of the women in the society of Namibia have been immune to it, being it artists, politicians, people at grassroots level, marginalized groups, even those who are high-ranking politicians were also victims of the online violence over the past few years. Now, the launch today will cover exactly what was done, of course, as aforementioned, and the funding partners in addition to that. So I wish everybody to sit tight in their seats or in their cars, wherever you're driving, to just please understand what this country assessment is all about and how exactly it is that we have taken cognizance of the various violence and the various people affected in the digital space. Without further ado, I wish to hand over back to you, Josephat, so that we have this discussion and see how best to address the issues of online violence in Namibia. So welcome everyone from the various countries, from the various continents, possibly as well, and let us listen in with a keen ear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, for that welcoming introduction. And yes, we appreciate it. I've read the comments and I've taken notes that the participants could not be able to see the video. So I am replaying both videos again, and kindly please do let me know if you are able to see them this time. And then after playing the two videos, then we will dive into Nashilongo's giving us the overview of the research. So here are the two videos again.
On the internet, I've been called an insect, I've been called fat, I've been told to test for testosterone. And that's the danger.
Josephat, there's no difference to the screening.
Okay, that's what can you see my screen first?
Yes, we can see your dashboard screen, yes.
Okay, if I play the videos on my screen, are you able to view them? Or what is it showing on your end?
Just your launchpad that has the different videos without, and when you play it, the screen doesn't project through to us.
Trying to see. Sorry for the technical. And is it still not projecting?
On the internet, I've been called an insect, I've been called fat, I've been told to test for testosterone.
No, it's still the same.
Okay, so I think for time, let me then hand over. All right, I apologize for that, colleagues. So I think for the meantime now, let me quickly hand over to Nashilongo to give us the overview while I will be sorting out the video issues. And then after Nashilongo's overview, then I will be playing the videos again. Nashilongo, are you there?
Hi, Josephat. Yes, I'm here. Just quickly checking if everybody can hear me. And I will project shortly.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
will begin projection shortly. Okay.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. All panelists, I would like to share my screen. All right. I hope this is the right one. Is anybody able to
I can see
indicate if they? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Give me a second, please. I need to just put this on presentation mode without my my side screen being viewable. Anybody able to help me with that? Yes. Over here. All right. This should do it. All right. Hi, everyone. And I'm happy to be here today. And by standing on the protocol already observed by both the meeting chair and the president of the Internet Society, greetings and good afternoon or morning or evening from wherever you are. My name is Nashilongo, and for this project, I served as the team lead, and hopefully I will not spend too much time taking you through what the research is about, what our findings are, as well as the recommendations so far. I'm trying to time myself because I could get carried away, but I think for the sake of time, let's go ahead. Right. All right. So this research and the report obviously was part of the project that we've been carrying out, funded by the Africa Digital Rights Fund, the fourth round for that fund, run and sponsored by the Collaboration on ICT Policy for East and Southern Africa, CIPESA, as you see here. As my colleagues have already mentioned, this was part of a 6-month-long campaign that we have been carrying out, and it had a number of goals. And one of those was to obviously analyze the existing policies currently in place and just assess the extent to which they deal with online violence. The second was to run a large online awareness campaign. Large is the word I'm fumbling over. But with that, we aimed to open a dialogue on engagement, especially on online violence through online platforms. We had hoped that our outcome is evidence-based training or evidence-based report or research that seeks to address specifically policy shortcomings in online violence, including domestic online violence, but also to create some sort of advocacy or tool that can be used in negotiating that space and creating change. So this is just some of the work that we have been using through the campaign, and it was shared all over social media via various social media platforms that ISOC has, and they were quite very simplistic in nature, with really the reason to get people engaged with the materials. So part of that as well, part of the 6-month campaign, we had a stakeholder validation workshop. We obviously ran this survey to complement or supplement the research on existing evidence. We've been engaging with champions, and I hope that our champions are here. If they are not, those are the voices and the faces that Josephat was trying to bring to your to you. But also we aimed to collect online safety messages and tips on curbing online violence against women and girls, but also to a certain extent engage in artistic form of of raising awareness through a flash mob and poetry, and those are also, we've been having those and carried them through our social media platform. And in addition, create a citizen call really to cement this campaign as an urgent policy matter. All right, so as part of the campaign, again, we engaged with Common Voices, what we call a Common Voice campaign, really engaging with Namibian who run their businesses, so their community affairs via social media. And particularly here, we engaged a journalist, a policy analyst, musician, entrepreneur, an artist. We have also engaged with a former, or actually a beauty queen, or maybe that's not the right word actually to use, but a model or fashionista, and of course, another musician. Through this research, we engaged, quantitative methods, doing that through mixed methodology of content analysis, but also a survey. Our research period was for a period of 5 years. I see there's a hand raised. Josephat, you want to address that, and then I come back in case it's very urgent.
Yes. I'm not trying to see, it's not actually showing whose hand it is. So maybe the owner could then just jump in and we can take it up from there.
Sorry, it is Paulina Magongo. Paulina, if you can just engage directly with Josephat Shiko via the DMs, and I think he will attend to you. And that will help me to quickly continue for the sake of time.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so some of these stats are very basic and also very cumbersome. So I'm just really going to concentrate on ones that matters because they create the background to which this research is based on. So the country, obviously, as everybody knows by now, has 52% of internet penetration. Most of that is through mobile subscription, which is over 102%. Another one here, just trying to move the screen, is that consequently 51% of the populations are internet users, with 31.2 being active social media users. And below are just some of the countries' engagement rankings globally, just for your own background, and we can always revert to those if they ever if the questions ever arises. In terms of gender-based violence, because I probably will be able to engage later between the link with gender-based violence and online gender-based violence, or online violence against women and girls, and which are very closely related as per the wording themselves. So Namibia is quite very patriarchal society, with only 43.9 or 44% of households having female leads. That's the population for females, according to the National Democratic Housing Survey of 2006 to 2007. And according to that research, by then, 1 in 3 women across the age of 15 to 49 had reported to have experienced sexual or emotional violence from their spouses by that time. So further down there's just some of the reportings as well that are key to this research. For instance, the crimes reported to the police between the year 2012 and 2015. But most importantly, again, just a reflection on internet connection in the country. I think very, very important here is that Namibia is the only country, I think, want to believe, only African countries with a digital gender access gap in favor of women. I think it's -7 in the region, but also globally. So that's a very good development from our side. So there are a number of policies and laws in place that protect women, especially on gender-based violence, and these are just some of them. And then obviously I will just start by reflecting on some of the work that we have done as part of the Internet Society. We are happy for those who have joined us today, and we're part of the launch and research of this research that you see. It's online. Josephat, if you're able to share, or Ngari or Anna, please feel free to share the links to where this report is. So this is one of the reports that we have conducted with another partner, and particularly it looks at internet access and women empowerment, affordability and official data, issues of digital skills and education, relevant information on the internet, but also engaged on safety online. So in understanding online violence, we actually found out, obvious, and which is obvious, that there's a very close relationship between the violence that takes place offline and the online space. That's obviously because the internet amplifies whatever happens on the physical world into the online space. On that, we see a lot of, over the years, we have been seeing some initiatives related to raising awareness on sexual reproductive health, for instance, or issues of women and girls, and those were run primarily on social media or through the internet. But also there, our research also points out clearly, maybe without already opening the findings here, is that the non-consensual image sharing, or what is known as revenge porn, is one of the most visible form of online violence in the country. And that's for obvious reason. When that is outside, when that is out, it is out there, and everybody can see it and can feel it. Additionally, we also looked at online violence and how it manifests amongst different communities, and particularly the indigenous women, where we are one of the communities where we found that there's a very close link between indigenous women's pictures and photographs and how they're related or where they are found, especially on the internet. We saw some pictures that were shared on Facebook, but were found on pornographic websites, amongst others. In relation to marginalized communities, we have found that people from very vulnerable communities who make ends meet every day have been subjected to be brought online without their consent, but also without their personal presence on these platforms. I'm sure for those in Namibia, you would remember this lady, Auntie Vivi, or May Vivi as she was known. She passed away a few years ago, I think 2008, and how she became a viral sensation on Namibia social media was that people were buying her a lot of alcohol, and she becomes vulgar, and they take videos and they post them on social media. Today, 4 years after her death, if not 5, her videos are still on social media. So that speaks to issues of her rights and issues of concern that we might have to be digging deeper, especially with the panel discussion. Further, I think you also remember this picture or this young man became viral a few years ago because of us, everyday users, take videos of her photos and put that online without his consent or without even changing the social situation that he lives in. So this is just a dimension again on online violence and how it manifests. So apart from the girls and women, there's also subcategories and the number of intersections where online violence happens. I think I might have not reflected here, but the LGBTI communities, part of our research has found out that it is even more, members of that community are more subjected to the violence online. I mean, I'm sure that's possibly the same offline, but the differences are quite there. So when you get the report, you'll be able to reflect on that and be able to engage on that. And then obviously, I think of particular interest, but also just not here in Namibia, is that the violence in Namibia, in this case, is quite prominent, targeting women in political spaces, women who are prominent in any other space. I'm sure you have heard of the First Lady's experience and that video that she has released a few years ago, and those comments speaks to that. And again, here, some videos of how women politicians are subjected online. This obviously speaks to issues of the violence that happens online and targeting women and girls. Yes. As I've mentioned before, journalists and again, any other women in the prominent space is constantly targeted by online violence and misogynistic abuse. And I think most of you here can know the lady on your right, left, depending on where you are. This is Blanche Goroses, and there's a specific thing, a specific part of her experiences online, which is not actually the banner that you can see, but one that spoke to her experiences during the last year's elections, or the 2019 elections rather, where somebody got into her DM and promised to rape her and kill her if her uncle wins the elections. I'm sure for those who understand the local context, that reflects on to the political space and how that also has influence to the violences that happens online. And of course, here you have our own Rejoice Maroa, who's a member of the chapter and been doing a lot of work raising awareness in this case, and her own experience with the Miss Namibia in 2009. And then also another aspect to the violence online is gender misinformation as a form of violence. And without taking up so much space, maybe I should rush through so that we can get to the findings and the recommendations of the report. This also just some of the images from the internet on gendered misinformation. I'm sure we all remember that incident that went viral again last year about the Etosha incident and how that played out. But what we also covered in our research is that the online space has also become the one place where people find agency to advocate for change, for activism of themselves, but also at organizational level, just like we are doing today. Obviously, there's been a number of government responses related or speaking to online violence. I think getting that to translate to to action, I think is it's least tangible action that protects as many people as possible or accessible to as many people as possible is what we will be delving into. The report covers a bit more on government response. Also, just at this point, that there are already provisions in, I think, the Communications Act, and they speaks to online violence as other misdemeanors or so, and whether those are known or not, I think is what we could be talking about here today. So we then went on to do a survey, as I've mentioned before, and this I'll run through quickly is really just responses from that survey, and you will get a chance to engage with this further. Amongst others, we had 71 respondents to an online questionnaire that we have distributed. I thought for us, 71 was a good enough threshold to engage through this this research, yeah, we are happy with it, and the results that that it revealed, I think, speaks to a sample, representative sample that we aimed to cover. So out of those, 91.5 identified as female, while 8.5 preferred to self-identify. 61% of those who have responded to that survey reported to have had experiences the violences online, while the others, 29.6, have not encountered, while the other 9, or at least 10%, could not recall whether they have encountered violence online. I think that's the issue with the violence online, because it manifests so differently. And sometimes you'll be like, what just happened, without knowing that the violence has happened, or realizing that a bit later. Also, part of these responses were that, do I have this doubled? Okay, I've just gone back. Yeah, so some of these, some of the texts that you see are some of the forms of violences that we sort of shared with the respondents, and to those, then they clicked or chose that they have experienced some, many of those. As you can see here, you have sexist and misogynist abuse at 42%. You also have targeted hate speech at 42%, and others, sexual harassment, discriminatory memes, all being identified to have been experienced. So again, these are some of the stories that our respondents shared with us as to when we asked if they were able to share in details further their experiences. These are just a snapshot of the many that were shared. Here is this slide actually shows or reveals rather the type of, or the gender that perpetuates the violences online, with 54% of our respondents reporting that they have experienced abuse perpetrated by men, and 11% by women, and 29 or at least 30% reported by both men and women, or at least them thinking that the abuse was perpetuated by both men and women. Then we obviously researched on safety online by asking how our participants felt online, and only 7% felt absolutely safe when they are online, with the rest hanging between uncertainty and not sure how they feel online. In terms of the platforms where the most violence is experienced, our respondents or participants identified that they have 40, or at least 41% of them have experienced the most violence on Facebook, with Twitter and TikTok, I think, and Instagram, also somewhere in between, and WhatsApp groups and WhatsApp in general being one of the lowest platform where violence was experienced. Obviously, as everybody know, especially on social media platforms have what they call community guidelines that they expect, or they reason that users ought to know when they come onto the platforms. And this is this indicator that you see is the responses to how people felt, or participants or respondents felt regarding the reporting of acts of violences when it affects them or others online, with only 18.3% of them having feeling very least confident, and 35 having felt very confident in the reporting processes. So we also went a step ahead and asked the respondents if they have ever reported, because being aware and actually reporting are two different things. And of those, 51% of those felt that they responded that they did not, they have never responded with violence online. Yeah, I think maybe I will skip some of these slides, but these are just some of the words that came out strongly amongst the respondents, just about the violences that they experiences online, body shaming, stalking, blackmailing, slut shaming, harassment, homophobic abuse, and all these other ones that you will be able to engage within the report itself. So I think that's where I end with the research responses. I'm not too sure if I should go to the recommendations and findings at this point, Josephat, or we could reflect on those as part of the conversation. But otherwise,
If I could just interject, maybe because the panel discussion is based on the outcomes and the findings from your report, it might be wise maybe to start off with it. And then when we start the discussion, we can just, talk about personal lived experiences and it, fall back as a resource as well, what you found from the report.
All right. Now, thank you, Ngari, for that. So let me continue shortly. So our findings, do I have a, okay, here we go. Okay. Sorry, okay, so I'm back now. In regards to gender-based violence as a special section of our report, as I've mentioned, that our research clearly identified a strong relationship between offline gender-based violence and online violence against women. That's because the personal lines of a person online and offline have become very, very blurry in a highly digitalized world, especially for those who are connected. As also reflected on earlier, is that online spaces obviously absolutely amplifies offline behaviors, and that's also part of our research findings. For instance, we found out that when say a GBV case has happened anywhere else, and it's reported by news organizations who obviously use their social media platforms to reach their readers, that story receives even more negative responses or negative engagement, at most supporting what happens offline, and again carrying the violence just a little bit, not actually a little bit, just carrying the violence that has happened offline even further. We also found out that the laws that are aimed at curbing gender-based violence, including the National Gender Policy, does not recognize ICTs as a tool to empower women, nor does it recognize ICT tools, nor does it recognize that ICTs has the power or facilitate gender-based violence in themselves. I've also reflected on earlier about the Women's Rights Online report that when we launched it a few years ago, the granular data for that research was not published. And since it has also fallen within the reporting category, we're able to reflect on it again. Here, just to find out that there is no specific policies or laws that aims to protect women and girls on the internet in the country. And there's also no collection of gender-specific ICT data that gives gender meanings to national deliverables and monitoring purposes to current initiatives. We also found out that there's no training happening amongst the judiciary or the law enforcement, particularly that speaks on digital rights and the protection of women and girls in particular. Also that we didn't find any gender-specific digital skills training taking place at country-wide level that was reported during this period. Please excuse my son, and I hope I'm able to just change this. Further, we've found out that the current ICT-related laws that the country has in place, they are very silent gender-wise. They have adopted a gender-neutral language. I'm happy that we have our Deputy Minister of ICT amongst the panelists, and she'll possibly able to reflect a bit more for us in this case. In understanding online violence against women and girls, is that the internet has become the go-to place for activism for organizations and individuals alike regarding violence online. Again, as I've mentioned before, that revenge porn has become one of the prominent forms of violence against women and girls in the country, and that indigenous women are at most sexualized online by algorithm, but also by the culture tourism market. Vulnerable women and children lives are pawned with alcohol and meals by creators for viral moments that obviously make them viral for bits, but leaving their identities on social media indefinitely without their knowledge and their consent. I'm sure we have also seen those many videos of children from schools being shared by teachers and so many others. And also, this is a particular part that we did not get a chance to engage as much as we wish to have, and that is the community of the LGBTI and their experiences online. But those have been experiences, or those who we have experiences daily. I think in that part we have reflected on Huro's experience few years ago. We have experiences, or we have also reflected on experiences by of Leonard Witbian as one of the community members amongst others, as reported by the media. Further, women in politics and those in prominent spaces such as journalists, artists, leadership and the beauty industry are subjected to a lot more violence as a result of their prominence. And as you know, patriarchy does not rest when that happens. Gendered insult and misinformation have also become regular in Namibia, with those who has access and meanings to law pursuing recourse under variety of laws. We also found out that various organizations, individuals, and government officials have also begun to engage on this subject matter and prominently urging for clear interventions. Further, the government pronouncement on these issues has ensured some provisions in the law. However, the practical enforcement is yet to bear fruits for women and girls who are surviving online violences every day. Okay, so I think these are this kind of data I've already responded to. For instance, that 61% of the respondents to the survey have experienced the violence. Only very little community of the respondents felt safe online. But whatever happens, they're still on those platforms. I think also here, maybe just to reflect, is that only 2.8% of the respondents believe that the reporting procedures on various social medias were totally effective. The rest did believe otherwise. Okay, is this the recommendations? Maybe not. All right, I think I need to stop here. I might have to change my slides. Otherwise, I'm able to reflect immediately. Just to say that our report makes recommendations to 3 or to 4 communities. That is the government, that is the civil society, that is the media, and social media platforms, and government and regulators, obviously. Yeah. Thank you very much. Let me end here for now. Josephat and Ngari.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes,
Josephat, should I step in?
Yes, please.
Perfect. Sadly, my connection is not so strong, so I'm not able to share my video connection with you. Thank you, Nashilongo, for that concise overview of the report, and in particular, the findings from the team and your efforts in producing the report and making it possible to be presented here today. Hello, everyone. My name is Ngari Tjejamba, and I am delighted to moderate today's discussion relating to the status of violence against women and girls online in Namibia. We are fortunate to be joined by a diverse group of panelists from government, non-government organizations, and primarily who are based in Namibia, but also across the rest of Africa. So to begin, I just wanted to take a snippet of a UN Sustainable Development Goal quote that goes that the UN Sustainable Development Goals recognize that gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world, providing women and girls with equal access to education, health, care, decent work, and representation in the political and economic decision-making processes, which fuel sustainable economies and benefit societies at large. Violence against women, whether it be offline and online, therefore must be acknowledged as a manifestation of a systematic marginalization of women throughout society. Enhancing the use of enabling technology, ICT, in particular information and communications technology, to promote the empowerment of women requires the elimination of online violence against women. So that is the backdrop from the UN Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, that I wanted to preface before we head on into the panel discussion. And we're going to cover 4 main key areas where the panelists are going to start with a brief short introduction, maybe about 30 seconds or so of their own background. And then we'll enter the discussion covering 4 areas in relation to number 1, the findings that Nashilongo just presented. So number 1 covered gender-based online, whether it's actually a thing, and that correlation, that relationship that exists between online behavior and offline behavior. Number 2, we're going to talk about the online women rights. What are the legal frameworks? What are the civil society avenues? What is currently here legally, currently in Namibia, where people who want support or access to information can go to. Number 3, examples of the most prevalent cases of gender-based violence online. What is actually happening? What are the most common occurrences? What is the current status quo? And number 4, we're going to talk about what is being done or what can be done going forward. The what, the who's, and the hows. Who is responsible and how can we aid in ending gender-based violence in women and girls in particular? Without further ado, I would like to begin by calling on the panelists as they appear on the flyer that we sent out. So we are going to begin with Juliet Nanfuka. If you can just spend 20 seconds, a brief introduction about yourself, and then we'll go into question number 1 in relation to just elaborating on what the current status of gender-based violence online is from your personal experience. Juliet Nanfuka.
Greetings, thanks for that intro, Ngari, and thanks for the presentation, Nashilonga. It was very insightful on what's happening in the landscape out in Namibia. We look forward to reading the full report. Yes, my name is Juliet Nanfuka. I'm based out in Kampala, Uganda, where I work with a collaboration on international ICT policy for East and Southern Africa, otherwise known as CIPESA. We are really honored to be a part of this project through the Africa Digital Rights Fund, which supported this work, this investigation into the online dynamics experienced by women and girls in Namibia, but as well as the various campaigns that have accompanied this whole project. So well done, and we're pleased to be a part of that. Ngari, would you like me to go on?
Let me just unmute myself, sorry. Yes, please just maybe elaborate a little bit. And just because of time, I just want us to kill one bird with 2 stones. After your introduction, if you can just talk about your own experience as far as how you view gender-based violence currently in where you operate and the organization you work for.
Great. So it's interesting to get this perspective from Namibia, which has a higher gendered access in favor of women, digital access rather, in favor of women and to men. And yet we still find ourselves facing the same problem as we've seen in the various other countries where we have seen or been a part of similar research. The challenges remain the same, the scenarios remain the same, the approaches remain the same. Of course, it is the doxing, the non-consensual sharing of personal data and images. It is the sexist abuse, the ghosts, the stalking, the sextortion. All of these dynamics are still experienced along very similar lines across the various countries in the continent and by extension, the rest of the world. So it was good to, well, it's not good, but it's interesting to see that even in a country where we still have more women than men available online, these scenarios remain. But I also wonder what that means in terms of movement building, because in areas where we've seen these cases of online violence against women and girls, we have seen movement building, trying to push back against the perpetrators of these affronts online, who are often using fake accounts, who are often anonymous. But even in cases where they're known, there's a community that sometimes rallies together to push back. So it'd be interesting to understand what that looks like in a country where we have more women online than men. Is that sense of movement building there to the same level that it is in other countries where there are fewer women able to participate in such? Or is it something that such work can continue to support and encourage people to do when they bear witness, when they're witness to such incidents happening online? So that was one of the standouts for me. Another thing that stood out was the clash of culture and the exploitation of culture online. We've seen the images that are being used that have sexualized the African, the female form, the bodies of the young girls and women appearing in porn sites, appearing as clickbait, but also demeaning the owners of those images in very, very abusive ways. often without their consent, in similar ways that we've heard the story of Auntie Viv, whose content, whose presence was abused to the benefit of others, in the form of creating opportunities for ridicule, for, just for laughs, which was unfortunate, and which often happens at the cost of women who may not necessarily be online, may not necessarily have or own a social media account, yet have their voices, their bodies, their recordings shared in public platforms without their consent, to the benefit of others in the online space. And that is often in a rather ridiculing manner or approach. So that is something that I found quite interesting there. And again, something that happens across the board, particularly in Africa, where we have more women offline than online, and whose images are used often without their consent, often without their knowledge, and often to ridicule them, but also to their content is used for the economic benefit of those who are familiar with digital spaces, are familiar with monetization of online content, and so there's a bit of a play in that gray area where they can claim that is their content, even though they have not necessarily secured the permission from some of the owners of the images or videos that they share and benefit from. Do I still have time?
No, I think we can just end there for now, and we'll come back to you in relation to other points as well as you expand. We're going to go on to UNESCO, Miss Dr. Iyawa. Just a brief introduction and then, yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Gloria Iyawa. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Informatics, Journalism and Media Technology at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. I'm also the UNESCO Chair for Gender and Digital Technologies. My current research revolves around the use of digital technologies to address gender issues such as maternal health, women empowerment using digital technologies, and cyber gender-based violence. All right, I would like to use the opportunity to thank ISOC for this presentation, this platform, and I'd also like to say thank you for that, for the summary of the research you've done in the last few months. It's really helpful to know the current state of things in terms of gender-based violence. Okay, most of the reports are actually similar to what we've known, but there are quite some shocking points which were highlighted in the report, which I would also like to emphasize on, because I'm a huge advocate for social media platforms being used by women, because since the outset of the pandemic, there's been an advocacy for women to use technology, social media platforms to do business, to empower themselves. But now when we have cases like online violence against women, it's now being questioned, how safe is it for women to actually make use of this opportunity that social media platforms have provided? So this problem with online gender-based violence can actually deter women from actually going further in empowering themselves because they don't feel safe. Based on the report, you can see that the majority of people, the people interviewed in this research, they didn't feel safe using these platforms, especially Facebook. How can that be addressed in such a way that women are once again feel safe in using social media platforms, for empowerment without the fear of being harassed, being molested, being harassed in such a way that they feel depressed, they have lower self-esteem? How can this platform be revived in such a way that women feel safe, women and girls feel safe using this platform? And another shocking part of the report is that the majority of these cases are unreported, because that's where the whole problem is. If someone is carrying out online violence against women and girls, and he feels that he or she feels that nothing can be done about it. Like, if I do it, nothing will happen. I'm not going to be punished for it. It will continue happening. But the question is, how can we ensure that women are encouraged to report these cases? How do we ensure that women are encouraged to report these cases, to ensure that these perpetrators are actually brought to book? What actions can be done? These are the questions. Sorry?
Dr. Iyawa, I mean, you're making an excellent point right there. And the fact that cases are not reported.
Yeah.
You know, to play the devil's advocate, it also highlights to the point that, you know, is online gender-based violence on women and girls even real? Because oftentimes the counter argument can be that, look, Twitter is not really a real place. Facebook is not really a real place. You know, it's just something online that I just, you know, and how does that relate and go into real world experiences from your own insights, into the fact that most cases are not even reported?
Okay, from my own perspective, I think women should also be educated on the fact that these issues, if they are reported on a daily basis, imagine more than 51% of these cases are not being reported. What would happen if these cases are reported? They should know what they should be educated on what the next step should be. You know, if they encounter such occurrences of online gender-based violence, what should they do? I think there should be some sort of awareness around this. Because we can't really stop women from using social media platforms. We can't really stop them because this is their right, this is their power. We can't really stop them, but we can educate them digitally. What's acceptable, what's available, what can we use in our power with the use of digital technology? How can we use digital technologies to support ourselves, you know, when we encounter these issues? For me, those are the key issues I would actually like us to talk about in today's talk. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and insight. Honorable Elizabeth Kamutuezu.
Thank you very much. My name is Elizabeth Kamutuezu, and I'm not a deputy minister. I'm a deputy director within the Ministry of ICT. I'm responsible for the ICT policies and regulations. I've been with the ministry for almost a decade now. Firstly, let me just comment on the ISOC Namibia and the partners for a very good report that bring out the clear pictures out of how women and children, especially the girls, suffered online through online violence done by our counterparts, men. And one wise person saying, let's talk to the men. And in my observation, none of them, they are here as part of the panel, but I do recognize them as participants. Maybe later on, they will also help us to devise strategies how we should stop this. But saying that does not also mean that this type of violence is not committed by our own fellows, who are the ladies, who are the girls, who are the women of today. So moving forward, my opening remarks, I would like to say that the current online violence against women and children, especially the girls, is just adding fuel to already traditional violence that is happening in our homes and everywhere at public places. Having said that, we really need to have better systems that cooperate with the law. It's time to bring in the law to take its course and to bring the perpetrators to books. We have been observing and reporting and talking, but no action has been taken. And secondly, we also need effective takedown procedures to take down those abusive and harmful content on the social medias. This also goes to the internet or ICT intermediaries like the Facebook, the ISPs, the service providers. They should also play their part to take down those content. It was reported recently that a content of a lady who passed away 5 years ago is still making rounds on social media. Why is it not taken down? Why is it not reported? Or maybe it's taken down, but it's still circulating. Do we have effective systems? just to sum up, I know there is other speakers, and I know I will come back to the issues of law. Just to sum up on my observation or my line of thinking, I think the best practice to combat this a serious pandemic again, which is online violence, online violence against women and children, especially the girls. We need awareness. Let's sensitize our girls, let's sensitize the entire community about the preventative measures, what we need to do to protect ourselves. Because when you go and sign online, you have to know the pro and cons, and you need to be able to protect yourself against any eventualities. Secondly, we need to safeguard the systems. We need systems that are safe, and a due diligence need to be done, especially when we report this abuse. It should not be rushed off and be treated as normal cases. And this is also bring in the internet service providers to safeguard our safety online, in particular, the safety of women and girls online. And lastly, we need to sanction these things. We need legal systems, we need laws that will enforce and bring in some punitive measures and consequences to the perpetrators. That's my introductory remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. You spoke about systems, and I just want to briefly ask, does the Ministry of ICT have systems in place to actually record the number of gender-based violence cases that are happening online?
And unfortunately, the role of the Ministry of ICT is to create a conducive legal and policy framework. That particular role should be lies with the law enforcement officers, but we are in collaboration with them. I remember with a child online protection, we have a system in place where such incidents could be reported, but that platform almost died because no one is reporting. But there was a platform created for even you report anonymously without being identified who you are, but the reports were coming in very, very few numbers, and to date, I don't think we have yielded any result. Maybe it's time to revive our efforts again. And since the pandemic, the users, the online users, the numbers have increased, and many girls are online and many women are online, as reported, that we have been encouraged to use the technology. But I wanted just to inform you that one ministry really is to lay the foundation of a legal and policy frameworks, but other ministries are there for the enforcement and implementation of the laws. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
But we are working in collaboration.
Thank you.
We have another
Let's
question.
move on to our fourth panelist. No, we're going to move on to Jumbo. We're going to come back, but let's move on to Jemima Beukes from Namibia Media Union. You can just briefly introduce yourself and have an opening remarks in relation to whether gender-based violence online is actually prevalent, and whether and why it matters.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Nashalongo, for a very comprehensive and insightful report. I agree with the previous speakers that there's certainly a very urgent need to raise awareness about the rights of women. In my view, in my experience, my observation, many women still don't know how to recognize issues like grooming, for instance. And like you've also pointed out earlier, it takes a whole new, online violence is a whole new world for most people. So they don't recognize some of the blatant abuse as abuse because it's on a different platform. They don't know what to make with it. My experience personally is that it's online, people laugh it off, and because it's so public, you just want to get away from it. So in most cases, women do not even take this up with, especially journalists won't even take it up with their editors because they just want to get over and away from it. And there's certainly, and then obviously the realities also differ. Not everybody has the same, in terms of gender-based violence. For some people, gender-based violence is as simple as having someone raise their voice to you. And for someone, it is brutal attacks on you. So very often there's this confusion when someone attacks you online. Oh, he didn't beat me up, so I suppose this is nothing. Let's just get over with it. And we need to obviously sensitize women about the avenues that they can use to get justice when they've fallen victim to these kind of abuses. Which brings me to the draft cybercrime bill. The IPPR has pointed out, and one of the concerns, major concerns the IPPR has pointed out, is the fact that this bill has been drafted or put together before 2014. And if we compare 2014 and the state of the internet to today, it's a whole new world. Twitter is a bloodbath right now compared to before 2012. And people have, I know some journalists who have received threats of rape, even murder online, and you wouldn't have heard or thought or heard of something like this 14 years ago. So even as much as we need the cybercrime law to be put in place, we need to make sure that we have a robust law that will really effectively deal with the issue that we are facing with. The other issue coming from a journalist perspective is also journalism is rooted in patriarchy, like most systems in this world. And women often find that when they venture into certain critical, when they start reporting on critical issues outside the normal health and gender and women issues, and they start reporting on investigative and politics and business, they face immense abuse. They are made to feel unwelcome. Even in WhatsApp groups, you are sidelined. When you make a remark, nobody's going to point out to you that you didn't get the figures correct. In fact, they'll make you a laughing stock. And like I've said, so sometimes you don't even recognize the abuse because it comes in different forms. So these are some of the issues that really need to be addressed. I don't know how exactly, but they absolutely must be addressed. Yeah, so those are my opening remarks.
Thank you so much. From a journalistic perspective, I think journalists play a big role in making sure that the awareness of these cases are actually in place, and for evidenced by the report as well. Most of the historical data points were going through newspapers and looking at cases as they relate to when and when they were reported, as opposed to maybe popping up to a police station and trying to get that hard data collection set that you have at a certain centralized place. So journalists have a big role to play in relation to increasing awareness in space as well. So thank you for that input. Linda, over to you. From Namibia Diverse Women Association.
Thank you very much, Ngari. Let me acknowledge our fellow speakers and their contributions. And of course, also ISOC, because ISOC stands out for us, because I'll be speaking from LGBT women's perspective. And it is the first institution who integrated a minority group in as women and looked at us beyond our sexual orientation and really striked our visibility in this study. And it would be good if future engagements can take place for us to be able to extend greater lens within the LGBT women's violence online. And yes, Ngari, online gender-based violence does exist for members of the lesbian, bisexual, trans, diverse community. And this is even a double barren. First, you're a woman, then you have an alternative sexual orientation, which inclines direct homophobia and prejudice over you. And then at the end of the day, you have systems that outroot you online that actually diminishes your character and also affects one's well-being. So for our community, it is evident that violence physically is existing within our community, and now online even takes a double barren around that. So for us, we experience greater harassment, hate speech, and also direct threats that sometimes leads to extortion, where people who find themselves, who are not out, find themselves being extorted, and of course not understanding that there is a legal framework in this country that they can access. And that clearly stems back to to us having to discuss the realities on online bullying and what that means for us as a community. Because I can give you a case study. Last year, we dealt with an online harassment and bullying that was perpetrated by a law enforcement agent who was targeting lesbian women. And in the same framework, didn't realize that the lesbian women that he was approaching were a group of friends that in the end got us to go and report this case. But what we have also realized is that the law enforcement agents sometimes sit with the challenge of not really knowing how to further the case from that counter, but also how to encourage us to be able to understand how the legal framework speaks. And that speaks to higher, greater risks, because in this regard, we had to engage and take this conversation to the next level, because it became physical, also from online to physical harassment, where we had to not just stop at the counter of the police station, but go to the higher authorities so that they were able to trace and really realize that it was one of their colleagues. But until today, the case died. But giving that framework around it, it clearly indicates that there is a need for training, not just for law enforcement, but generally civic education is a challenge in our country. And civic education stems back to the principles of human rights and making sure that people understand their rights. But then if that level of physical right access is a challenge, how will people even understand using online and what their rights are and how they can even find retribution for being harassed? And I think that retribution discussion is also something that we need to embark upon in order to ensure that access to justice is attained. So 3 key things on this question for me is access to information on online bullying, harassment and violence, and what forms it takes. There is a great need that visibility and awareness and structural reform is attained in the country. And then the second issue is freedom of expression, what that means in terms of gender-based violence and reflection on what it means online. And the last thing for me is access to information, but also access to justice in order to ensure that people are called to book and people are held accountable. So I'll stop right there just to be able to be in line and in tune with your timing of your question. Thank you very much.
Linda, thank you so much for that input. As far as vulnerable communities and marginalized communities are concerned, I'm going to move over to Emsie. Emsie, over to you in regards to the question at hand.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Emsie Erastus, and I was the project researcher on this specific project. I'm currently a research consultant dealing with media, technology, communications. When we started with this research, it was actually one of those bittersweet research, because you knew that you're going to uncover things that will potentially hurt you as a woman, but you also knew that it was a very important discussion to be heard, or important research to do that is. Just to answer your question, online GBV for women, is it real? And I guess that's a very important question, because it is a question that a lot of people are debating and trying to figure out if women are really, or girls are really experiencing what they're experiencing, or are we just making noise? And sometimes people think that the internet space is a space where emotions do not exist, and we're not realizing the emotional damage that our comments can cause upon individuals. We have heard of situations like Vivi's, but also something that really stood out for me is child pornography, and how child pornography in the world, around the world, children are protected. And that's a very big thing, that as we come together as a human society, we make sure that girls are protected around the world, or children are protected, not just girls. But then we have something in Namibia that is very unique. We are seeing images of Himba girls and Khoisan girls who are circulating on porn sites. And I don't know, we are having the Ministry of MICT here, and this is something that really should concern. If we cannot protect even the citizens of our nation who don't have that privilege to speak up for themselves, like little girls finding themselves on porn sites, and we know that the internet does not forget. A few years from now, especially with facial recognition, for example, a child can come from Ovitoto, open up a Facebook account or whatever platform might be trending at that time, and their face can be recognized. And that's something that really should concern our society, which should speak on how we need to take serious the laws, and we need to really make sure that laws become a thing today. And it's not something that still needs to debate about, because research has been done. We have given a lot of proof to say that women and young girls are facing a lot of damage in the internet space. And it's something that we need to start acting laws now on. And I think it's just something, because if you look at, I was in a conversation with Facebook AI in a workshop that they had, and they're talking about how their community standards and policies are set about. And we raised these specific questions of how indigenous communities are protected within the internet sphere. And their main response was that Namibia, being a small country in terms of population, it's very hard for their AI to pick up certain words or certain trends, and thus their community standards cannot really monitor that. And that should really concern us as a nation, and the civil society and government needs to come together and see how we can come up with laws, and not even come up with laws because the bills and everything has been spoken. How can we implement them today? So just briefly to answer your question.
Thank you, Emsie. And you alluded to our second question, which relates to, rights in regards to, when it comes to online violence against women and girls. And for this second question, I want us to do an ad hoc approach in relation to the fact that I want everyone on the panel has spoken, but we're just going to call a few individuals or anyone who wants to speak on that particular question, maybe to just share their view. We're not going to go automatically on a case by case, individual by individual basis. But the second question as it is now is what are the prevailing rights for women and girls online, locally and globally? As far as trends are concerned, as far as global trends are concerned, I know that some might allude to the fact that maybe Namibia is behind on that, as evidenced by the current report. But I would love Juliet to come in here to give us, maybe Juliet and Gloria, if you can give us a global perspective, and then we can go to Elizabeth to give us a local perspective, and anyone else wants to chime in as well can contribute accordingly. Juliet?
Okay, so there are various rights that, provisions rather, that are made to support the rights of women and girls at a global level, and these have trickled down to a local level as well. But the issue is to what extent are these rights actually supported by the state, by law enforcement? How well are these rights understood by the rights owners? And that is where we find the gray area really coming up. Like had we mentioned earlier, some people do not even realize when their online rights are being abused, which points to a lack of understanding of what online rights actually look like and should be practiced and should be protected. And perhaps that is also an extension of a reality offline. We have various frameworks in the various countries, and I think Namibia is working on, let me have a look here, on a document that is aimed at combating domestic violence. Close to that is documents pertaining to data protection. All of these, which are generally supposed to also speak to protecting the rights of women and girls, only that they're often not gendered in their language. But also there is a cybercrime bill that is being worked upon in in Namibia. And these are similar instruments as we find in the various other countries. In Uganda, we have very similar language type frameworks. We have a Computer Misuse Act, which in its premise is supposed to protect the rights of all online users, but we have often seen it being used against girls, being used against women, than it has been used against perpetrators of online crimes. So whose rights is it actually protecting? Is it protecting the rights of women who are fallen victim to cyber abuse? Or is it protecting the rights of men who have perpetuated or committed these crimes? So even in the presence of these instruments, whose rights are they actually protecting? And that is a debate that needs to be taking place alongside the emergence of these bills in a country like Namibia. We have a Data Protection Act, but as has been as has been mentioned earlier, we've seen a lot of data belonging to girls and women being exploited, being misused, being shared without their consent. And that is something that's happening everywhere, even in countries where a data protection law exists. And with little action towards addressing the issues, often people do not know where they go. Some people don't even realize that they do have the rights to challenge the misuse of their information, the dissemination of their information. So even though these may not have the word girls or women in them, there's still prevailing rights that are fundamental to both rights online and offline. So that's what I wanted to point to. But also in the greater scheme of things, I wanted to point out that these rights never work. I mean, these laws and frameworks never work in isolation. Rights do not exist in isolation, do not exist in silos. They're very interrelated. And that is something that we should also be aware of when we talk of rights. When we talk of the right to access to water, it speaks to other rights, like the right to education. Do you have running water at your school? So we need to always maintain a linkage between the various rights that we talk about, so we do not leave things in isolation or forget or drop some off the table when we talk about the digital society, for example. It needs to be holistic because it is indeed an entire tapestry of lived experiences that are transferred from online spaces into the online arena. But for the sake of time, I know we're running short. I'm happy to chip in as we go along. And as somebody also mentioned in Tanzania, that there is a Data Protection Act, and they're also fighting for data rights in Tanzania. So all pretty much along similar grounds. We have all of these laws aimed at protecting our various rights as women, as online users, as citizens, but there's a gap in their understanding, a gap in their enforcement. And that is something that such research stands to address, stands to support in terms of advocacy and in terms of informing those who are supposed to be supporting or enabling the realization of these rights at government level, law enforcement level, media level. The media are also sometimes responsible for the perceptions that are carried by citizens in how they report on some of these issues. We have seen media sometimes exploit images shared without permission. So what does the landscape look like or say about the misrepresentation of violence against women online? How does it look at it or report on it through a rights perspective? So there's quite a lot in this part of debate around rights pertaining to women, but also as they pertain to the greater human experience online and offline.
Thank you so much. Dr. Iyawa, if I can just jump onto you quickly, in relation to UNESCO, what is UNESCO doing in relation to promoting digital rights as you're sitting on the UNESCO chair on gender? Maybe you can give us your perspective in relation to what your agency and organization is promoting in relation to this field.
Okay, thank you very much. The UNESCO, the UN as a body, they prioritize gender equality. We prioritize gender equality, and we are a huge advocate for safety for women, not just online, but also offline as well. So we have a number of procedures we teach women in order to safeguard themselves, both digitally and, in terms of human rights. We advocate for people to be able to express themselves online. despite them being either male or female. So one of the rules, or one of the fact that the UN has shown so far, is to be able to express yourself digitally and respecting human rights. And the approaches which the UN has particularly set up to ensure that human rights, not just women, but just human rights, being able to express yourself digitally, is in place. Okay, I can mention a couple of digitally enabled measures that have been in place. For example, in countries like Brazil, they are, digital innovation which addresses risk such as sextortion, online harassment, using AI-powered chatbots and fictional characters. So these are some of the things they have put in place digitally to support harassment, online harassment, especially for women and girls. So there are other technologies that are in Beukes as well. For example, tech for preventing the act of gender-based violence online. There's what we call Safety Pin. It's a mobile app that crowdsources and maps real-time data from users to provide public safety. So the app utilizes location safety scores to help the users, primarily women and girls, to plan their routes and find safety places to stay. It's used in over 100 cities in Indonesia, which is in Asia, East Asia. So these are just some of the measures digitally that have been put in place to ensure that women and girls are safe. Through protection, tech as a peer, having these digital technologies to safeguard women when they use the platforms, when they use online platforms. There's so many things, so many digital innovation that are actually online at the moment, which people can make use of. Maybe people are not really aware of these technologies, but they're actually in place. It's provided by the UNICEF specifically. There's a report around it, which actually looks at these technologies and how they can be used as safeguard measures for women when they make use of digital spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you alluded to human rights, and there's often a contradiction when you talk about human rights, and then you're saying that we have to put limits in relation to the activities that people have online. So then the big, two-letter word is free speech. Aren't you now curtailing those individuals that want to express themselves according? How does UNESCO deal with that, from your perspective?
Okay. So we have, because we believe that each policy is different from country to country. People should make use of the rights that are available within their country. But unfortunately, in some countries, these policies are not well developed to support people. But then the UN supports the expression of human rights in the sense that, when these issues happen, there should be a place provided by the state where people can actually voice their concerns. And this would help reduce the fact that they will, women who experience this sort of harassment, this would have to reduce the fact that they would limit their use of the internet, thereby limiting their rights. So from the UN perspective, we advocate for human rights, in terms of reporting these cases, fighting for justice, but then it all boils down to the countries, specific countries where these women are located, if they're experiencing this, and how does the law within that country actually help them in resolving these issues. So based on the report we have so far, Namibia is, taking actions at the moment, although it's not where it is meant to be at the moment. But I think these are just little baby steps, which I believe as time goes on will lead into something fruitful in the near future.
Perfect. We have a hand raised by Linda. So if you can just come in before we go to Elizabeth. Linda?
Yes, yes, Ngari, I want to pick up on my fellow panelist contribution on the status of human rights. And this is exactly what I was referring to, the importance of civic education in online digital awareness, because it's important to understand that human rights are indivisible, are inherent, and are there, but also comes with limitations around it. That basically affirms that human rights needs to play out online also, as it plays out in our realities as we are as human beings. And the protection of free speech is still protected online, just as it is protected in reality as we're having this conversation. However, the key word there is dignifying everybody's expression by respecting it. And I think that is where the key thing of misogynist behavior comes through, where men try and distill where rights can be affirmed and where rights cannot be affirmed. And that is why us as women, we continuously experience gross violation as the determinant of what is harassment or a violation. At times is predominantly laid by men. You would also see the online bullying and harassment that we are experiencing as women is predominantly sanctioned around how men and systems that have crafted men's personalities and frameworks get to oppress us as women. And then in the same light, you find us as women trailing along. And this is why there is a need for us to amplify human rights and broadly civic education online and offline in order for us to be able to ensure that all citizens know their rights beyond their homes into their gadgets, and then be able to affirm that. I also know that at the UN systems, at the UN level, through UNESCO's office, that there is conventions that are out there that are laid to assist our governments to be able to strengthen structural reform at country level. However, we must also understand why online cybercrime is not addressed directly from a human rights perspective, because the cybercrime that is addressed online affirms a complete different form of violence perceived, but not the violence that we are talking about as a form of crime, or in terms of looking at it from a civil point of view. And I think we need to contextualize what that comparative analysis means for us as women in terms of making sure that our protection online is continuously affirmed, irrespective of who we are and what status we have in our country. Thank you very much, Ngari.
Thank you, Linda. And I just want to quickly jump over to Elizabeth. If you can just elaborate further in regards to what the Ministry of MICT is doing in relation to gender rights in this space.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I think when you talk about the issue of human rights, everyone knows that our rights is already safeguarded in the Constitution of the Republic of Namibia. And the ministry as a public agency, we have to uphold that rights in whatever service we deliver to the public. But like I said, in the interest of time, I would like to make very few short comments on the laws that have been mentioned. And first, I would love to recognize that everyone agreed in your report that the online protection is gender neutral. Yes, it is, because technology is also gender neutral. It does not discriminate. It does not link to a certain gender, but whoever click on can use it, or whoever have access can use it. And there were two laws that are critical to the topic of the day, and that we mentioned in different ways. Some have been said that some comment have been mentioned. Someone made a comment that the cybercrime bill is have been in draft format for almost since 2014 years. And we take note that you want the rapporteur's law on that matter. The law has been taking long. That's equal to the data protection due to some different interests in the society. It's not like a deliberate move from the government that we drag on with these laws, but it's the process itself. But I hope during the course of this year, we will finalize these laws, both as mentioned, the cybercrime and the data protection. The cybercrime have tried to frame in the element of children. When we look at child pornography, there is a specific chapter that deals with that matter, how we should deal with child pornography visuals, images, and content. And it's prohibited in Namibia, or it will be prohibited in Namibia by the law as it's drafted. And it also creates offenses, different type of offenses that some have been mentioned in the report. Yeah. So I think it's already now safeguarding the privacy of people to be online. Whoever violates your rights will be subject to the law. And I want to make a statement that we always lean on the law. We need a law, we need a law. Traditionally, we have a lot of laws that prevent crime, in particular related to children and women. But we see the traditional cases, the rape, the beating up of women, the abuse, they are in escalation while we have existing laws. Having said that, if we enact these laws, it's not our intention to lock up everyone in the cells. We might not even have space. But as it's said by the other speakers, it's time for us to be reactive and to try to prevent this such of violence not to happen. How do we do that better? We need to create dialogues. And I think the civil education have been overemphasized, and I don't want to deal with that. Now, when we come to the data protection, the preamble of that law, it's right to privacy. It to protect private data of personnel or person, meaning that your data, you have to give your data with your consent. And that law deals with three critical components or entities. First, we have a data subject. That's a person who will provide the information, the person who gives the data. And you must do it with a consent, your own consent. You should not be forced. And you know, when we consent in Namibia law, you need to be over a certain of age. So I think moving forward, when we have that law, it will help us also to minimize the mushrooming of information of the minors. And I'm glad, or I'm not glad to say, but if you analyze very carefully, 50% of the content that has been abused online, it came from the victims. We create this content, we share it with our associates, or it happened to be there for one reason, maybe by accident, and it become a content, and everyone recycle it, and it become a serious it have an impact on the victims. So we should also be careful while we also take recognition that being online, you want to be detained, you want to be educated, you want to be informed, but you have to know your rights and your duties and obligation. When we talk about the data protection, the person who will collect your data will be your data controller. There are procedural, there are obligations that will be expected from the controller. What you must do with this data. You collect it for the purpose, you use it for the purpose. How you process it is also outlined in the law. So in the conclusion, I would love to call upon the fellow Namibians and the guests around that. It's time for us to fight this crime. It's escalating. That also come into the traditional norm of normal gender-based. Both of the crimes are in escalation in Namibia. First, I think we have a missing link. We have the problem, and then here we have solutions. We are recommending, but there is something missing in between. What is the root causes? Why this is happening? And how are we going to diagnose this before we recommend? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I think you alluded to what I'm going to post as our final question for this debate, because we want to give at least 5 minutes to open up the floor to the audience as well to make their own contributions or questions that they might have in place. And Josephat will be leading that conversation there as well, along with me. Panel question that I want to pose to Jemima from a media perspective to start with, and maybe Linda and Esme can go next, is what is the way forward for government, civil society organizations, media, and the public at large in ensuring that violence against women and girls is at least reduced or evaporated and eliminated as a consequence? Jemima, any efforts there? Any thoughts?
Okay. The previous speaker said something is missing, and she pointed out that it is she wanted to get to the root cause. But I think what is also missing is that we are there's definitely an urgent need for a holistic approach. We need to raise awareness in the community. Like Linda pointed out, civic education is very, very important because we've pointed out that many people do not comprehend or understand what their rights are, let alone rights online. Then there's the issue with the police. Even with the draft cybercrime law, there's a gray area in terms of how these crimes would be reported. And in my view, we need to train and sensitize police officers on how to deal with victims when they come and report these cases. Namibia, as we know, has a very, very big problem when it comes to gender-based violence. Like the previous speaker said, it is just escalating despite the laws that we have in place. Now imagine if a woman finds it extremely difficult to report a case, a physical assault case. What about someone who comes to a police officer in whose mind online abuse does not exist? Such a person will be the laughing stock. I mean, we know of cases where people go and report physical abuse, and they are the laughing stock of the police on duty that evening or that day. So police officers definitely need to be sensitized and not only trained. They must understand. We need a whole change of mindset for people to understand what it means for someone to suffer online abuses. Like in the journalism fraternity industry, for instance, we have so many female journalists suffering from mental health issues because of these abuses online, and because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't really get support, because when they share it with their colleagues, people laugh, because like someone's, I think it is you who said that people have different definitions and different lived experiences for what what is an abuse for one person may not necessarily be an insult for another person. So these are the issues that we need to address. Yes, laws are very important, and they must be effective. We can't just come with a half-baked law and expect change, but we can't also just rely and hope that that the law would be a miracle worker, that it would just suddenly make these things go away. We need to change and obviously work the ground for people to change their minds, for police officers. And Namibia has a big problem when it comes to implementation, and that is one issue that we certainly need to address when we want to really better the lives of women and children online. What I found a little disturbing, I don't know if that is what she said, I may have missed her. I may have misunderstood Juliet when she said that it would be advisable for women to try and limit their time online if they suffer these abuses. That is exactly the problem of online violence, that at the end of the day, women do not go online, and they don't go for online trainings, they don't go for online seminars, they don't go for these opportunities online. They don't even, and also you have a right to have a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and just because there are these perpetrators and these abusers out there, you must now limit yourself. I found that a little disturbing, and I hope that I hope that was not what she said, because these are the kind of things that perpetuates these kind of abuses. Women are made the scapegoat. It's like dressing, just because you were dressing a skirt, you are calling to be raped. So we should definitely do away with this kind of language. Thank you very much.
Okay, quickly, we're going to jump over to Juliet since you called out on what she said. Juliet, please give some input.
Hi, no, absolutely not. That is not something that I stand for or would say. In fact, I stand for the opposite. At least in our work, we try to encourage a community of solidarity so one does not feel isolated or alone during times of attack. And in so doing, building the confidence of others who see that even when I get into trouble, there are people rallying behind me. But what we try to do through our work is to try to build that community. And it's also part of the extended network that we work with, such as the community working on imagining a feminist internet, feminist technologies. You know, that's what we want to build. We want to have more female voices online. We want to have more African female voices online to push back against some of these issues that we are seeing, including in emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, where the African female is ranked almost invisible in its development. So no, we need to have more voices online, more community online, and that is what we've been doing through supporting initiatives such as this, having those conversations with the various entities, politicians, law enforcement officers, because just like in Namibia, we also see similar issues here, where reporting is low of offline incidences and is mirrored in the reporting of online incidences. How do we shift that? How do we get to a point where the police recognize and more proactively address offline gender-based violence in a similar manner that they should address online violence against women? So we are trying to build a community, we are trying to build movement, we're trying to create awareness even for those who have a role in the amplification of what's happening in online spaces, such as the media, such as some civil society who may not necessarily believe that the dynamics online are actually reflective of offline society as well.
Thank you for that response, Juliet. And as we conclude this discussion, I just want to call on Linda and Emsie a little bit. Maybe Linda, you can go first. If you can just give us a 30-second, discussion or just input, into what is the one thing you want to see for the community that you deal with have changed as going forward to address the issue at hand?
I think for me, the primary root cause stems from the fact that our country is struggling from addressing GBV in the country. So if GBV generally is a struggle for us to overcome, what is the reality that we are facing online? It could be worse than what we are experiencing. I think for me, what is key is for us to be able to familiarize ourselves with the current cyber crime bill and the data protection bill, and also the legal framework that is in place in order for us as civil society, for us to be able to contribute to that framework so that we can ensure that the protection of gender and gender realities are affirmed. I also think it's important for us to develop strategic advocacy interventions, starting from ICT, understanding ICT, because our people don't understand what it means to hold a phone in your hand and what it means to be connected and what that means in terms of data protection, and also when you click OK to terms of reference. And I think that you link to civic education in order to strengthen the interreality and connection of what we need to do. And then the last part for me, the role of the media needs to now be to be strengthened in the sense of of technology and integration, and also understanding the intergenerational realities of differences that we're experiencing compared to the processes of legal framework that is taking place, because we need young people's voices to be able to share what the impact is of online gender-based violence, because that would bring us transformation and the rebirth of an evolution of a new generation. Thank you very much, Ngari.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Linda. Emsie, as someone who was a contributor to the report itself, what was the main key recommendation that the conclusion came out of the report? Emsie?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers. So apart from implementing and constantly reviewing the laws that would govern the internet sphere, something that is missing actually is the communication between governments, the civil society, and the big tech companies, which are your Twitter, your Facebook, and all these platforms that we are on. These various big tech companies have certain procedures in place, and unfortunately, the African voice is missing. And perhaps it's time that our government start engaging more with big tech companies on how we can protect our people in the internet space. So that's something that needs to be taken seriously when it comes to education, when it comes to implementing their community standards, when it comes to just governing the whole internet sphere. It needs to be that synergy, and there needs to be that communication between civil society, government, and big tech companies. I don't think we can emphasize more on how big tech companies will play a big role going forward, especially when you're talking about things like the metaverse, virtual reality, and all these things. So we need to start speaking to each other. And obviously from government, we need the laws to be implemented, but also from the public, really. The public needs to be, and I guess this is where the media comes in, to really bring forth a very forceful education to say that just the internet sounds scary because we make it scary, but the same rights that exist offline should exist online. The same way you would treat a person, and it's unfortunate, like Linda said, that we already have these issues offline, and it's very hard to deal with them online, but we need to keep educating. We need to constantly, the media needs to keep telling their story. Jemima said that female journalists are afraid to talk. We need to start hearing these stories more, because when we start hearing them more, we start seeing that there is a problem that we need to fix. Thank you.
Emsie, thank you so much. And panelists, I want to give you a great round of applause for for your time that you've allocated to us today. Each of these questions actually deserve a whole panel discussion on themselves. So to even try and fit it in the 1 hour / gap that we had here was a mission impossible, but I appreciate your insights and your well thought out input and contributions that you gave to the participants here today. With that said, I want to give the mic over to Josephat. Please, if we can open up the floor to the participants. Maybe they have a few questions in place that they can ask the panelists. Josephat, Nashilongo, over to you.
All right, Gary, thank you so much really for the panel discussion. It was quite insightful. And I am happy that, we managed to get different perspectives from the civil society, from the government, from the international agencies, and also from other countries like Uganda on some of these issues that we are facing in the country, and, the ways that we can try and mitigate it, and some of the possible suggestions also. So I have seen a couple of different questions that were being posted on the chat. Some of them were on, comprehensive laws addressing online child sexual exploitation, if there are any laws around that. And then there were also questions on, what laws currently exist that protects those, or that holds those that do not play by the books, or that those that do not want to follow the rules. What are the ways to mitigate that, or to make sure that, people's rights are not violated? The main issues that I was also hearing was basically on awareness on how can we raise more awareness on these issues. And one of the key questions that was also raised was actually on, the reporting mechanism. What are the reporting platforms that are there? There was an instance where one participant actually made an example of, you might go to the police and they might not also, or they sometimes do not take these things serious. So what are the right platforms that one can actually go out to report or to raise this awareness or this violence for them? And then another most important one was on the images. Anybody takes anybody's images, they share it, they do mockeries around it. So what are the laws that are there to protect one's data around some of these issues? I saw that Ms. Elizabeth Kamutuezu unfortunately had to jump to another engagement. And oh, okay, thank you. So maybe I think you can maybe touch on, if it's okay with you, to touch on any laws that you think exist or do not exist, especially laws around online child sexual exploitations, as well as also the laws around people sharing other people's images, and maybe if there are mechanism or policies or laws in place that also protects or that one can use for those that do not like to follow the instruction or to follow the laws.
Yeah, thank you very much. As stated before, we have 2 draft laws of cybercrime draft bills, cybercrime and data protection. But however, our Communications Act number 2 of 2009 have provision that covers the issue of recording, taking images, pictures, whatever, without anyone concerned, and distribute it or process it or share it or in your possession in whatever way or in whatever intention you want to. So the Communications Act of 2009 is in force, and there is a provision that protects the citizens. Maybe it's the issue of people are not aware of that, but I'm also equally aware of some people that were brought to law or to books, making that provision, or especially when you distribute images
I'm rounding it off now.
without communications. It makes provision for that.
2 more minutes.
The internet, the NAMPOL, our Namibian police have a division for cybercrime, although it's in a very infant phase, but is growing up. They are getting necessary training and exposure. We all have to acknowledge that cybercrime is a new phenomenon, and we are learning as day by day. And as you know, the technology also is evolving very fast, and criminals are also far ahead. They know what to do. But in that light, I would love to inform you that the Namibian police have a dedicated division for cybercrime. It's headed by Inspector Shibikwa, and they have been dealing with these cases on a daily basis. Some cases don't go to court. People apologize. Sometimes it's people that have been very close friends, that have been in relationship, that end up abusing each other online. So each case has its own merit, and they look at it. But I know of cases that were in court of distributing images and recording without people consent. That is a crime as per the Communication Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I'm seeing some hand raising, but unfortunately, due to the time, some of the questions that were also asked here are already quite on the report that Nashilongo just was giving some highlights around it. So I think for the interest of time, since we are a little bit beyond the time, I just wanted to request if we could just round this off and where we can conclude it. Our email address are there. We will also be sharing with you the report and then all the other relevant documents. We unfortunately also couldn't share the videos with you, but I will make sure that those videos, the links will also be in the email communication that will be accompanied with the research, so that you have all the information at your own perusal. At Internet Society, we are also here to provide any other additional information that you might need around some of these issues. But unfortunately, really for the interest of time, I wanted to really thank each and every one of you for availing your time, for being part and parcel of this engagement. It is quite a fruitful engagement. It is an engagement of interest, as we could see by the numbers of questions that are being raised, as well as also by the engagement and the participation of each and every one of you. So I really want to thank each one of you. Thank you so much for being part and parcel of this. And with that, I would like then to officially close off this report launch, and then we can engage on other platforms. Nashilongo, do you have anything else to say before we conclude this?
Hi, Josephat, thank you. No, actually, I don't have anything else. Really just grateful for our panelists, but also the participants who joined us today. I think you've already acknowledged that. I really appreciate the conversation and look forward to the research from our side, or the report from our side, as Josephat said. Thank you again, and thank you for being part of the work that we do as part of the Internet Society.
All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I think with that said, we are now officially at the end of our engagement for this report launch. Thank you, and let's keep in touch for more information, and please do not kindly follow our social media platform for more engagement and for more upcoming activities from the Internet Society of Namibia. With that said, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.